Hey everyone, welcome to this lesson. So in this one, we're going to go over a practice. I have two really fun and really interesting practices for you guys to really master variables and understand how they work. With that being said, you can actually access the practice file in the resources section. So as always, you can just click that. It's going to take you to Replit and you can fork the code for yourself. And you can basically just start using it. So we got two variable related practices. It's super fun. And I'm actually excited to actually talk about this stuff because it's going to really get you familiar with variables in a very interesting way. One of them is actually pretty tricky, but it's actually pretty interesting to learn as well. So with that being said, let's get it started. So the first one is actually pretty simple. So we have talked about prints and inputs before, right? So this is the variable practice number one. And this is pretty much a code cleanup. So the idea is that you want to turn the inputs into a separate variable, all right? Print this sentence using variables and strings only, okay? So what you want to do is that you want to make sure that turn, first of all, the values, the inputs into variable and print the sentence using variables and strings. So you don't want to have input codes in there. So let's get it started. So if you remember, we are asking for this in this sentence, we're asking your name is, we're asking for your name, and also we're asking for the age, and that's it, right? So we're going to have two variables. The first one, I'm going to call it the name. So name equals, and I'm going to call this input, right? So because we're asking for an input, right? What is your name? There you go. So just like that, we asked for someone's name and stored that information into a variable called name. Next one is the age, right? So we're just going to say age equals input, same thing. And we're going to say, what is your age? Or how old are you? How about that? How old are you? So we got the information. Now we're just going to make a print or write a print function, okay? And we're just gonna say your name is space plus, and for that we're gonna use our name function or name variable, right? So we're just gonna put name and we're just gonna say plus again, start a quotation mark because we're saying something, we're like using a string right now. And you are, there we go, plus age, right? Plus and years old. Here we go. So let's actually see if this works. I'm just going to get rid of that real quick and run it. And here we go. So we're asking for a name. I'm just going to say Sean. Old are you? 28. And here we go. Your name is Sean and you are 20 years old. 28 years old. All right, here we go. So yeah, so guys, that's pretty much it. So I see, very simple, and we cleaned that code up. Now, instead of having that long code, what do we have here is a very nice and clean code that is essentially, we can use this information. Okay, don't know what happened there. We can use this information in a different place. So for example, if you have it like this, if you think about it, we have to, every time we need this information, we need to ask that information. So let's say you have a code with like thousands of lines of code, you have a program with thousands of lines, and you have to ask for that every time, right? You don't want to do that. But what we can do instead is go here and like assign a variable and ask for that information once, and get that information, turn it into a variable, and refer to that variable whenever we need to. So guys, very simple. And again, we cleaned that up and it just looks a lot cleaner and simpler, right? So that is basically a cleanup. That's practice number one. As I said, guys, before, you want to make sure you don't do it with me. You either do it before me or after me. That way, you do it off memory and off, instinct, instead of like just copying me, right? Just keep that in mind when you're using Replit to write this code. You want to do this. Now, second one is actually a really tricky one. And this is the reason actually I wanted to include this, is that These are the types of questions that you're going to get when you are looking for a programming job. And like in an interview, you're going to get questions like this. And it is pretty interesting. It is very, like, these are logical questions. Like, you just got to use logic and turn that into a code essentially. And they're not that complicated, but they can be very fun, and it's really interesting to understand it. So the idea with the practice number 2 is that you want to switch the value of A and B variables between each other without changing the inputs or print codes. Okay, so these are values A or B, right? So these are variables A, B, and we're receiving an input from the user and say, okay, give me the variable in value of A and B and print it right here. So you want to write a code that is going to switch these values within each other without changing this or changing the print function. All right, so you want to write something that is going to change the switcheroo between these two. So essentially, if we give A a value of 50 and B a value of 100, we want this to print A equals 100 and B equals 50. So switch between those values. Now, if you think about it, the best way to describe it is that, let's say you have a glass of Coke and a glass of milk, all right? So if you think about it that way, if you want to switch the contents of these two, what you need is a third glass, right? So you can have a third glass and pour the milk into that third glass. So now you have an empty glass, and you can pour the Coke into the original milk glass, and then pour the milk into original Coke glass from the third glass, right? So that's what you do. You use a third glass to essentially switch the contents of these two glasses between each other. And you can use the same thing, same like logic essentially for your program. So let's actually run this first and let's take a look at it. Let me actually turn this into a comment. Okay, so if I run this, we're just going to get now this program is going to ask for value of A. I'm going to say 50, value of B is 100, and there you go. A equals 50, B equals 100. So simple, right? So the way you do this is that you actually do this by introducing that new glass, right? If you remember that example I used, the third glass. So you want to use a new glass, right? So you create a variable, a brand new variable, and basically that's how it works. So I'm going to create a brand new variable, call it C, right? That's our like brand new class that we introduced to the problem. So I'm going to say C equals, and I'm going to pour one of those glasses into the other glass that we just brought in. So let's say A, all right? So what I'm saying is that the value of C, this new glass, is going to equal whatever the value of A is. Now, what I'm going to do in next is that I'm going to say the value of A, that glass, equals B. And then I'm going to say the value of B equals C. So essentially what happened here is that we defined a new variable, and this is our third class. And I said that, hey, let's say A is milk, for example. This is milk. Essentially, we poured A into C. And I say, okay, now because A is empty, for example, we can take the glass of Coke and say A equals B. That means A is a glass of Coke now. And then now B, which had the milk, now equals C, which is, the glass of milk. Now we switched A and B between each other without actually changing the values. Now, if I actually run this code, let's see what happens. 50 is going to be A, 100 is going to be B, and there you go. A equals 100, B equals 50. See, guys, we used a third variable to essentially change and switch the values of two other variables. Again, it's just a fun little problem. Let me know if this was confusing. I know this can get a little bit confusing, but again, it's just like, it's a fun way to look at it. And these are kind of logical things that you want to learn. And when you get a job, if that's what you're trying to do, essentially these are the kind of questions people will ask you, to like solve. These are the kind of problems they want you to solve, and you kind of have to apply logic into it. So it's just something fun. Let me know if this was confusing to you. As I said, again, the code is in the resources section. You can just fork it for yourself and practice and use it, and make sure you use it. You do this or solve these challenges or problems either before watching this video or after watching this video. I don't want you to do it at the same time. And make sure you practice, because now we're actually going to put everything that we've learned into like one single program, and we're going to build something in the next few videos. So I definitely want you to be familiar with these concepts. So practice, spend some time practice on this. Like, it's very important for you to be proficient with variables right now, and print and input functions. So let me know if you have any questions. If not, I'll see you in the next video, guys.